It's Monday and we're talking football. There was a huge weekend there, Fintan O'Toole from the 42.e. How are you doing, Fintan? You made it to a couple of matches over the weekend, I believe, but it's so busy, even trying to go through all the games. It's an endless list.
Yeah, it's fairly frantic now. I suppose like a lot of companies are pressing ahead. Like you're getting to your knockout stages, all that. Then you have obviously the three Leinster counties are kind of held up at the moment. With the Clare Shoffley situation. So I guess for a lot of counties, the fact that they're getting the green light at the moment, they're trying to press ahead, and we're starting to see kind of clearer pictures emerging in terms of like most counties have kind of two championship games played now at this stage, and you're getting a sense around the country of the big teams that are coming to the fore, and we're going to start getting into now. I think September is when the real busy stuff starts, when we get into the knockout stages and start looking at county finals around the country.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a pragmatic approach, it seems, from certain county boards. I mean, we'll just touch on the statement released by the Dublin GA in a second, but like I was looking at Wuhan where all of this started, and there was like a video from the Associated Press just put out there of thousands of people at a pool party concert type thing. So life seems to be back to normal there. There have been some games kind of held up at the moment. We've seen that game with Raheny at the weekend that was postponed because of COVID-19, but the Dublin GA have decided that, well, it's looking like obviously players are going to be tested from this game. They were supposed to be against Oliver Plunkett's own Rua, and they're going to play off that final group game the weekend of the other three quarterfinals, which, just to clarify what they are, is Ballymun against Nafina, St Jude's against Skerry's Harps, Kilmacud against St Vincent's, and then Ballyboden will await whatever the other team to come through is.
Yeah, so I think it's probably the right approach. I think they just have to, because everything's so precarious, and I think the last couple of weeks, I think we've all maybe been reminded how volatile the situation is. I'm not sure everyone has the same level of hope for the inter-county season now, maybe what they would have had a month ago. So I don't know, can you wait for as long as people think? They took the decision, I think, in Clare last week. Clare are obviously one of the biggest dual clubs in the county, to wait for them and to give them the chance. But I think it'll be an interesting decision for a county if a few clubs are affected and they have to make a decision then, what to do with their championship. That hasn't happened so far, really. You have the Clucko situation, you have the Raheny one you're on about, Simon St Gales, and then last night they suspended their activity for 48 hours. So I suppose it's far more prominent clubs now, isn't it? Like, it's big senior clubs with lots of kind of well-known players.
We even had St Mullins against Mount Leinster Rangers in Carlow called off, so it's kind of happening across the board, and county boards are trying to find a way to, we have to keep moving while this is happening.
I think so. The disease doesn't really care about whether it's senior, junior or intermediate, does it? It's just going to be, it's just everywhere and everyone's kind of affected. I personally just would be the attitude that you just have to go ahead, you have to try and get your county championship finished. I know we have the first county senior final done. We have the year now next Sunday, the Wexford hurling final. I'm sure it's probably going to be a strange week for those counties involved, but Wexford will at least have the hurling done. They can kind of look at their football then, because it's just so hard to say. And I wonder at this stage, we're probably going to have some counties that maybe mightn't be able to complete it. If further restrictions maybe are brought in this week or what. So I think the attitude has to be that, the counties will have to just drive on now. I don't know that they can afford to wait, because I just think time is against them. I think they've tried, to be kind of as fair as they can, but it's probably the one year I think you'd have a lot of sympathy for fixture makers. We give out about them a lot, and in previous years it's been the biggest gripe in the GA, and I suppose it still is with the whole kind of club county thing, but I do think a lot of counties have done their best in fairly challenging circumstances.
Yeah, without doubt. Now, the Dublin Senior Football Championship took centre stage over the weekend, and we talked about that game that was postponed, Raheny and Plunkett's. But one of the games that stood out in terms of the scoreline was 4-22 Ballyboden, Whitehall, Columkill 110. So Boden, who are Leinster champions and got to an All-Ireland semi-final, of course, last year, they've put up a total of 13-53 from their group games. So they battered Clontarf by putting up 4-20, put 5-11 on St Vincent's. Colin Baskell scored 1-6 here. He's still looking unbelievable. And a plus 45 score difference. Now, they don't know who they're going to play in the quarter-final, but they're in fairly rude health.
Yeah, the goals is just amazing there. To get at least a minimum of 4 goals in your 3 games, and a couple of years ago when the Dublin Senior 1 Championship was the 32 clubs, maybe you had some mad scorings like this. I think Kilmacud scored 10 goals on one occasion. But when it's been cut down to 16 now, you should really have a kind of a higher standard. So I think that kind of elevates the achievement and kind of what Boden are producing all the more. I wonder as well, is there a case that their season went on till January. Obviously, Finns are some of these bigger clubs, are they benefiting from the fact that they've had a break and a chance to kind of recharge? I mean, would Boden, if the Dublin Championship had gone ahead in April, be kind of putting out these sort of figures? So yeah, they look in really, really good health, look in really, really good position heading into the quarterfinals. Probably one unfortunate thing for them, and we kind of touched on it, is the fixture thing that they will, their quarterfinal, whoever they play out of the group involving Raheny, Castleknock, and Plunkett's. If they were to win that, they would have less than maybe 10 days, would it be, to the semi-finals? I think the semi-finals are then for the 12th, 13th of September. So the fixtures are squeezed a little bit for them, but certainly they have a lot of form and a lot of momentum going in. And in fairness, across the board in Dublin, you have to look at the last 8 and say a lot of the big clubs have come through kind of as expected. I suppose the 2019 champions are out, and beating finalists are out in Thomas Davis, but they were a bit of a surprise package last year, kind of getting to that stage. So there's a lot of kind of big names there, a lot of big clubs. I mean, Kilmacud, Vincent's, and Ballymund, and Fianna in particular, their 2 quarterfinal pairings that really jump out at me. They could be absolutely brilliant to kind of watch. But definitely Boden looked the kind of pace setter so far with the scores that they're putting up.
Yeah, I thought that Castleknock could have won that game. They had a disastrous start. They conceded that goal that Darragh Mullen knocked in early on. Dan O'Brien got 4 points. Paul Mannion actually held scoreless from play. But I thought there was plenty of guys who were showing for Castleknock. Kieran Kilkenny, he was wearing number 6, but he played centre forward, and Keane O'Sullivan was picking him up. Thomas McDaniel, the Westmeath man, he scored 4. Seamus O'Carroll got 2. Now this is the Limerick forward, but actually left an awful lot of scores behind him. Some wild shooting at times from Castleknock. They're probably going to be pretty disappointed with getting beaten here.
I think they would. I mean, they didn't get level, pretty sure, didn't they? And they didn't manage to even get within a point. So that early goal from Crokes always kind of gave them a cushion that they could rely on, and they kind of weren't able to peg them back. But look, they're still not out of it. I think they'll need Plunkett's to do them a favour in the last group game. But I mean, there's got to be a lot of regrets when you lose your championship matches by 2 points to Kilmacud and by 3 to Raheny. There's pretty fine margins there, but to kind of not give yourself a chance to get out of the group, I'd say that would be a one that will kind of have a bit of regrets for them now, and especially with the kind of the 3 forwards of Inter-County standard that you mentioned between Kilkenny, McDaniel, and O'Carroll. I mean, you talk about them kind of leaving scores behind him. I mean, scoring 12 points, probably be thinking they'd be looking to do a bit better and usually kind of elevate that kind of tally. So yeah, I guess it just have to sit back and kind of hope maybe whenever this Raheny Plunkett's game is played that they maybe get a favour done for them. And even the fact that I suppose presume they have to stay training now for an extra 2 weeks, do they have to kind of keep themselves fresh. When essentially they would have thought, right, this weekend, this is our season, we're going to find out is it over or not. They're in a little bit of limbo now, aren't they, compared to a lot of the other teams,
which would be unbelievably frustrating. Just to touch on one other result. Now, actually, I just want to mention the fact that Stephen Cluxton played. He was wearing number 12 playing outfield for Parnell's against Coola in the Senior 2. Parnell's lost that one 1-9 to 17 points. So just a mention of that. No doubt he's probably very good outfield, fit as a fiddle. Ballymundo, that result really stood out, the way they beat the county finalists from last year, Thomas Davis, 3-15 to 8 points. And they were in great shape despite a disastrous start where James McCarthy powered through and scored a goal after less than a minute. But Thomas Davis had actually pared it back. They looked in good shape and then just got clattered down the stretch. Yeah,
that's again, it's another massive score to be putting up. No different to what Ballyboden did. The tone definitely set with that McCarthy goal. That was a brilliant finish, wasn't it? I mean, it was such a classic James McCarthy in terms of the timing of his run, the kind of speed and power he gets up to kind of break the line, and then a really emphatic finish into the roof of the net. But I mean, they are a team. I mean, you talk to someone like McCarthy, for all that he's achieved at Dublin, it definitely does great with them, the fact that they haven't added to the county title win in 2012, and especially given the way that All-Ireland club defeat went for them the following year, that they never got a chance to rectify by even getting out of Dublin. And they've had a couple of close runs. So yeah, look, I mean, maybe the fact that they have everyone together, maybe that that might have been the thing they might have said over the last couple of years, that all their Dublin players are coming back to them late, and they're obviously the core of the side, and they really kind of power them on. Maybe this might suit them better. They can build up a bit of momentum, that they have access to them all, and this could be a year that they could really target for this group to try and get that second title.
Yeah, with the 6 or 7 Dublin players. So that's the Dublin Championship. To quickly just reference the Monaghan Championship, a couple of results from there. Ballybay 2-9, Inniskeen 14 points, and Donaghmine actually drew with Clontibbert 2-11 apiece. So I'd say most people would expect the county champions with Conor McManus on board to be winning that, but wasn't to be. Roscommon Championship, very interesting result here to see Pádraig Pearse's, the county champions, losing to Tusk Lord Edwards. 111 to 10 points. A couple of other results. Clonagale beat Strokestown 17 points to 1-6. Boyle beat Michael Levy's 115 to 7. And St. Bridget's, they beat Elphin with a bit to spare, 317 to 112. And interestingly, it was St. Bridget's who beat Ballymun Kickham's in that All-Ireland final, I think 7 years ago now. But you had a piece with the Kilbrides in the 42 over the weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, I just did a piece with the Bridget's manager, Benny O'Brien. Just kind of struck me, just seeing the news of the last couple of weeks. The Kilbride brothers are both headed abroad. Ian is in the army and he's gone on a tour of duty to the Middle East, and Senan has moved to Abu Dhabi teaching. So Senan has been playing the last couple of games. He played the first 2 rounds of the championship, but he was always set to go at some stage. Ian hadn't been involved this year. Ian is 37, Senan's 35, so they're on the road a long time. But just it's interesting that 2013 team, it really has moved on. Whereas you look at that Ballymun side they beat, a lot of them are kind of still there in terms of Philly McMahon and John Small, James McCarthy, Dean Rock, and all these. The Bridges team has really changed. A lot of the big names that we would have been kind of familiar with for so long, and it was just kind of maybe a look at the contribution that the two of them have made. And I suppose the mantle has kind of passed. They still have Peter Dominican is still there, Roland Stack. I mean, they've still won county titles in 16, 17, so they're not exactly struggling in kind of Roscommon football circles, but they maybe have come back to the pack a little bit, or maybe the challenges have come up to them in comparison to when they were the dominant force in Roscommon, and probably Connacht as well for a good few years. They won 3 in a row before Corfin kind of took over. But yeah, definitely seems to be kind of a new generation coming through. They drew a Clonagale the first day, so you'd imagine that it's a different team, it's a different makeup, but they're going to be one of the main contenders again this year in Roscommon.
It was a very interesting weekend in Galway. It's looking like it's a bit of a procession for Corfin. I mean, they're pretty much relentless, whether it's whether it's county, whether it's provincial, or whether it's All-Ireland series in recent times, being the 3 in a row champions. But they had 20-point plus wins over Monavea Abbey and Oughterard, and they had a rest weekend. So it meant that Oughterard and Monavea, they ended up playing, and it was a 1-point win for Oughterard, who are the All-Ireland intermediate champions. But it was 2 late points. I think Matthew Tierney hit a 45, and Ryan Monaghan, centre back, he scored to win by a point. Now David Connors of the Tuam Herald was giving me a bit of a steer on this, but Killian McDade didn't feature for Monavea Abbey, which is a big blow. And he was saying that Oughterard are just class to watch. The 2 Tierneys, the half back line always get big scores, and between the half back line of Cian Monaghan, Ryan Monaghan and Ronan Malloy, they hit 1-5 from play, so that's fairly good going. But one of the real standout stories of the weekend, and again you have a story about this in the 42 today, is Bearna beating Salthill Knocknacarra. Now this Bearna side hadn't won a regular championship match since 2014 before this, but it's the second victory of the campaign. But they have had a very, very crazy lead into this game, didn't they, Fintan?
Yeah, I think I saw someone describe it as the first good news story of 2020 last week, with the 2 missing paddle boarders being found off the Galway coast. But basically this was a pretty big game for Bearna on Friday night, and it would have made a big talk kind of locally because they were playing Salthill, and this group is 4 clubs that are within a half an hour drive of each other between Spiddle and St. Michael's. And they're actually all in the same group as well last year in Galway, but Galway last year was groups of 6, so there was 2 other northern clubs. But this year it's just the 4 of them from kind of west of the city, all in together, all kind of fighting to get through the quarterfinals. So Bearna had drawn with Salthill last year, and then they beat them by 2 points, and obviously a big result. But obviously they found out the news on Thursday morning that the 2 girls were missing, and I suppose like anything, when you see these cases happening, a call goes out to local community groups, and the GA club is kind of one of the first ports of call. But the 2 girls involved, their grandparents would have been founding members of the Bearna club. They'd also have connections to the Salthill club. I think one of the girls' mothers would have played ladies football for years for Bearna. Clubs are kind of right next to each other. People kind of wouldn't be aware of the geography of it, and their club pitch is kind of very near the beach where they set off. So both clubs were kind of involved. So I was just speaking to the Bearna chairman, John Connolly, this morning, and he was just saying that he went out as part of the search party along the shore. There was loads of people from Bearna there, but he said everywhere you looked there was Salthill Knocknacarra tops as well. So he said you wouldn't really be coming across them usually a day and a half before a big senior football championship game, but that was kind of thought through completely out of it. And then he said just the absolute almost kind of surreal and shock nature that there was that there was such a happy ending and good news came through around lunchtime on Thursday. And then they went out and obviously played each other on Friday night, and Bearna shocked them win by 2 points and kind of put themselves in pole position now to get out of that group. So yeah, he just said a kind of a surreal couple of days, but he said, look, it definitely did give a big lift to them and I suppose kind of inspire them. But he said after such a weird kind of Wednesday night, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, to try and get your heads around the senior championship game again for the Friday night was a bit surreal.
Yeah, it's great that those two ladies, Ellen Glenn and Sarah Feeney, were found okay. Like on paper, Salt Hill would be considered Corfin's biggest challenger. Sean Armstrong, Robert Finnerty, who we've seen establish himself in the Galway team under Pádraig Joyce this year, Evan Murphy, Tom Culhane. But the thing, Bearna, they're managed this year by Sean Conlon, who was a selector under Kevin Walsh with Galway. So they obviously have a fairly professional man in behind them now at this stage. That's a huge blow for Salt Hill.
Yeah, I would think it is. I think Sean Armstrong hadn't started in a good while for them, but he obviously is a very experienced player. But you mentioned the young kind of forwards coming through. Culhane was one of Galway's best kind of minor players last year. I suppose it is a step up to kind of senior championship. It sounds like it kind of was a bit of a dogfight, only 2 points in it. And I'd say, but the local rivalry factor in this group must kind of elevate these kind of games and the kind of intensity of it. And in fairness, I don't think there's been much between them all last year. I mean, like the Bearna chairman was telling me that they drew with Salt Hill last year and Spittle, and they lost narrowly to St. Michael's. They've beaten Spittle very narrowly this year, and they've beaten Salt Hill narrowly. So there's very little kind of between them when it kind of comes to these kind of games. But yeah, look, on paper, that forward line, I guess the fact that youth though is the kind of defining characteristic coming out of that. When you look at Finnerty, Murphy and Culhane, all maybe under 22.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a kind of a factor. But definitely kind of a blow for them now. Obviously heading into the last games with Bearna now on top of the group. And as you said, they hadn't won a regular championship games this year. They'd had a few lean years since 2014. I think Pat Fallon used to be in charge in the former Mayo player, and they got to the semi-finals one year. So had a bit of a slump in the fortunes, but definitely a bit of a rival over the last month or so.
Yeah, St. Michael's beat Spittle 1-9 to 10 points. Elsewhere, Mike Cullen did a 4-9 to 2-14 win over Anna Down. So that's for the second year running. Damien Comer's club, they're out. Kieran Duggan's out with a long-term knee injury there as well. But for the second time in the opening 2 rounds, they've coughed up decent leads to lose. And like Mike Cullen didn't have Peter Cook, very talented midfield / forward who's in the States. Paul Conroy apparently in very good form for St. James as they beat Milltown 3-20 to 2-16. Clare Galway beat Carla Strand 4-12 to 10 points. Donny Buckley, of course, much vaunted coach. He's in with Clare Galway. Apparently of great talent coming through, even though Danny Cummins, obviously a very good player for Galway over the years. He's in Australia at the moment. Tuam Stars, they beat Killoe, so that was very much, they missed 2 penalties but still managed to win there. And then Mount Bellew Mylock, they had a win over Micheál Branagh 21 points to 2-7, and that was even without John Daly. Apparently Michael Daly was unbelievable, pinging in passes for Barry McHugh and Owen Finnerty, and pretty much destroyed them for a finish apparently in this one. The Cork Championship, so it's basically the traditional trio of St. Finbarrs, Castlehaven and Nemo Rangers. They're topping the tables and probably looking most likely to win this title. Yeah,
it's definitely been kind of a season so far that has shown maybe that there hasn't really been any kind of surprise packages jumped out at us. Like I was saying to you before, this is the first year that it's been streamlined in Cork, that it's down to 12 teams in senior grade, so it's a bit more tightly compact and a bit more competitive with kind of 3 groups of 4. But just like go back to what I was saying about like Boden, I mean, Nemo on the road a long time, season went all the way to January last year against Corfin. I really just think, I'm going to repeat myself, but I think it's a good thing for these clubs the way it worked out. A bit of a benefit if there was anything to come out of COVID in terms of the GF fixtures. They've had the rest and they've really hit the ground running in their opening 2 games. So Castlehaven are definitely true on the permutations. It would take a huge kind of a scoring difference swing now for St. Finbarrs and Nemo Rangers to be out, and they only need to avoid defeat and they'll get through. But looking really impressive. I mean, like St Finbarr's, the scores they're putting up. I mean, Stephen Sherlock scored 111. He was really impressive. And then this guy Killian Murray, son of Fionn Murray, you remember him, would have played for Cork corner forward. Like, he was out last year with a crucial injury. He probably would have been on the Cork under 20 team, got there in final. But like, he got 1-4 from play yesterday. I think he got maybe 3 or 4 points in their opening game, so he definitely kind of looks in good shape. So I think it'll be between those three. There'll be another couple of teams obviously going to join in the knockout stages, and there'll be one of the divisions. So that's starting in Cork this week. The divisions are still going, and so the group games are kind of taking place between, you play Wednesday, and if you win Wednesday, you play next Saturday or Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I know in Kerry the divisions are starting this week as well. So I mean, I was wondering, like as hard as it is for clubs to prepare this year, wonder what it's going to be like for divisions. And obviously, you've the Cork reigning hurling champions are a division, the reigning Kerry football champions, East Kerry, with David Clifford and all that, are a division. Duhallow were in the Cork final last year, or a division. But with everything so compact and so compressed, I mean, we'll kind of see what the team sheets are this week. But like I said, the three that I mentioned there, they'll all be in action. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how much player availability and how much access they're going to have, because you'd imagine a club with so much more on this year, they just might not be as willing to kind of let their players go, and the players themselves, when you're playing like 6 games in 7 weeks with your club.
Did you get to one of the games in Cork over the weekend?
Yeah, I was at the Bars game yesterday.
Oh, okay.
They definitely looked very, very impressive. Carrigaline would be regarded as kind of one of the stronger sides there, but I mean, like, St Finbarr's won the county 2 years ago in 2018. Look, hugely traditional club, have been out of the limelight for a long time, hadn't won it since the mid 80s when they won it that year. Surrendered their title last year then to Nemo, but they had a terrible run of injuries. Like, they had about 7 or 8 of the team were out injured. They've kind of got nearly everyone back fit this year. I mean, they're bringing someone like Michael Shields off the bench, who obviously provides a lot of experience, and they just have a lot of good options. So, but I mean, like, Castlehaven have come out of like there's 4 West Cork clubs, no more than the kind of Galway thing we were talking about, like the 4 clubs in close proximity. I mean, there's 4 West Cork clubs in the one group in Castlehavens, but they're going to top the group now. They're going to definitely be through. So they're obviously going well. And they have 3 Catalans playing for them this year, who are all playing hurling as well. So that's a fairly kind of intense schedule they've been in. But yeah, it's looking like the 3 of them, who've all been very prominent over the last decade, that they're going to be kind of there challenging it out when we kind of get to the business end stage in September.
And just to go over a couple of the results, Castlehaven beat Newcestown 112 to 9 points. So like any forward line with Mark Collins, Michael Hurley, Brian Hurley, all county players, it's going to be tough to stop. Nemo Rangers battered Bishopstown 217 to 6 points. And the thing that stood out with that is Conor O'Donovan got sent off with 20 minutes to go. I think it was a straight red. But from then on, Nemo still won the game 1-7 to a point. So it just shows how in control and cool they are.
Well, they actually as well last night then, so their second side would play Premier Demeter football in Cork, which would be essentially the 3rd grade. But they actually won last night against Canturk, who would have Aidan Walsh and would be regarded as a very, very strong kind of football side. But Nemo's second side beat them things like 4-8 to 17 points. So like, they've always had a very good second side and always kind of very strong. And I know this has been seen in Dublin at times, hasn't it? That the intermediate team of some of the bigger senior clubs has managed to win the county. But like, Nemo just seem to kind of keep churning out players and kind of keep challenging.
Yeah, and I wonder is a lot of that to do with the fact that they split up at underage levels, they kind of have 2 even teams rather than having all the stars in one and all the kind of weaker or lads who develop a little bit later on another team. And that's something you'd see in Martin's, Nave Martin up in Louth as well. There are clubs who do that, and it seems to really pay off, and I have to say I'm a fan of that. We'll move on to the Tyrone Championship. So Erdal Kieran, they beat Pomeroy to go into the quarterfinals. Omagh beat Dromore, so that's probably the biggest result of the weekend, and that was after extra time. I don't think Dromore had won for a few years in the first round, so that was a big one. Moy lost to Derrylochan, so Derrylochan are through. Mark Bradley scoring 1-8 for Killyclocker as they beat Carrickmore 213 to 210. Ardbow, they had a narrow win over Dunamore, and Dungannon won by 10 points against Loch McCrory. Did you keep an eye on Tyrone over the weekend?
Yeah, so saw a couple of bits of it, and like, the thing that kind of struck me was that I hadn't realised that it was going to be a straight knockout format this year. So obviously they had a couple of league games beforehand, and then this comes in. No, sorry, I think it's been knockout for the last couple of years, but it just strikes me as incredibly competitive. I mean, I know this is something I've read and seen Cara O'Kane, who you'd have on a good bit talking about, that he thinks it's just one of the most competitive championships. But I mean, I don't know, there's some stat that used to go back a long time for the last time some side did 2 in a row in Tyrone in terms of senior titles. And you just think all around them, Slaughtneil were dominated in Derry, obviously Crossmaglen and Armagh, Clontarf and Scotstown have done a bit in Monaghan, but there just seems no one club that is able to get a grip on proceedings in Tyrone to the same extent. I always think this, people say about the standard of club football in a county, what's the barometer of it, Cork are absolutely blitzing everyone in Galway. They're the best side in the country. Does that mean Galway club football is good, or does it mean just they have one absolutely great team? But I do think that Tyrone football, Wexford is quite good as well, I think, and then maybe something like Clare and hurling. They just seem incredibly competitive, and it must be brilliant for a kind of a club at the start of the year to think, look, we actually have a chance here, because there's about 7 or 8 sides always in contention. You probably check it out when was the last time a team did back-to-back, but again, Carrickmore gone at the weekend. They were in a couple of finals not too long ago. Oma, who you mentioned, are kind of gone. Moy gone. They won another intermediate club. So just on paper, this kind of big side's gone already. So I suppose we'll see how Trillick, the reigning champions, are in action tonight. So if they go early, that will be kind of preserved for another while about the back-to-back.
And while you were talking there, I did check it out. The last team to do back-to-back was Carrickmore in 2004-2005. So you're right. And plenty of clubs have won it in the meantime. So it's
I'm wondering, is that the longest when you look around the country? Surely you think in most counties over the last 15 years, I'm thinking like Vincent's in Dublin, Nemo in Cork, Crokes in Kerry, a lot of teams, a big side has come out, kind of got a winning run together, got a big core of teams, our players going in the one direction, and have put together a few county titles in a row and started to dominate. Just over 15 years, it just seems very impressive kind of state of affairs, that many kind of senior sides challenging for supremacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone knows the answer to that, please message in there that the longest spell without a team going back to back to win county titles. Jumping on to the Longford Football Championship, because obviously a very unusual situation going on with Killoe Emmets at the moment. They're the county champions, and it looks like they're going to be thrown out for not paying a fine for what happened with an under 16 game, which all seems very strange. And at the moment, in their group, Clongish, they drew with Mostram at the weekend, so apparently that was a bit of an epic game, and Clongish they're on the brink of an exit. But it depends on if Killoe can beat Mostram by 5 points or more, and that's if the game happens. There's an appeal this week, so it's a very, very strange situation for this to happen. And we just talked about when last did it happen that there's back-to-back in Tyrone, and has there been a better record than that? But when last has a county champion been thrown out of a championship midway through as they're trying to defend it?
I'm trying to think. There's nothing that's springing to mind initially, but I was just thinking, every county board official probably would have wanted a smooth running of a championship this year. Don't have much time for delays, don't have much time to be messing around. And it's not really because, they don't have any Leinster club winners to produce this year, but you're up against it if we get the green light for inter-county action. Longford are going to be in league action on the 17th of 18th of October, so you kind of don't want this thing to kind of drag on. And I know maybe Longford don't have maybe the fixture concerns that other counties have with hurling and football splits and stuff like that, but definitely you don't want this to kind of get into kind of appeal territory and kind of hold-ups and stoppages. Look, it just seems a complete mess. So I think there's kind of efforts to maybe this week now we might kind of see some kind of a white smoke kind of emerge as regards what's the next step is going to be. But definitely it's I suppose even going back to what we were saying earlier about the Dublin Championship with a bit of a hold up, for the other counties or the other clubs that are playing in this, is this the kind of thing hovering over them? That's such a big side and such a prominent side. Are they in or are they out? What does that mean for our chances? What's that going to mean for our fixture plans? There's enough uncertainty going on at the moment, with something like that probably being factored into the equation for players and managements alike.
Yeah, and whoever wins it then, if Killoe aren't allowed to fulfil the fixtures, it'll be told forevermore from Killoe players, there's an asterisk over your title.
That's always the worst thing you want. If there's any sort of a kind of a doubt. I suppose people are saying that about this year's All-Ireland if it went ahead, that given the knockout format that, it won't exactly be the same. But yeah, definitely, if you won anything, but one team was thrown out, I suppose it's one thing that if you didn't get to face them, the reigning champions, because of the way that the draw fell in your favour or whatever. But definitely if they're thrown out, that will always be the question. But you'll never be able to resolve it, you'll never be able to settle a pub debate or anything like that.
Yeah,
it'll always be there.
as far as I know, in the likes of Dublin, it's not considered a real county championship this year, so it won't go into the record books as a county championship. So, yeah, we'll see. Mullinachta, they beat Rathcline and they'd be expected to 4-14 to 110. Now, Rathcline apparently were, along with other teams, a couple of them were relegated, but just the way the championship fell this year and restructuring, they were kept up. And Mullinachta had been poor enough, down to 14 men when James McGivney was sent off on a second yellow. It was like 1-7 to 1-7 at that stage, but they kind of pulled away late on, and Donald McGilligan, Gary Rogers with a penalty, Patrick Fox and John Keegan, they all got on the score sheet. St Mary's of Granard beat Abilara. Now this is a bit of a shock now, because Abilara have been in 4 of the last county finals, but of course losing them. And Granard, again, I mentioned Rathcline being relegated last year, and so were Granard technically. Father Manning Gales, they beat Carrick Edmond 112 to 12 points. Quick run through Cavan. Crosserlock beat Lacken 315 to 14 points. Rammer United beat Cavan Gales 214 to 11 points. Lavey beat Shercock. Kingscourt beat Larry United, and Castlerahan, they beat Mullahorn. So the Clare Championship over the weekend, I mean, obviously the situation with Cratloe and the coronavirus there as well has kind of put the skids under things a bit at the moment, but you were paying attention to the Clare Championship over the weekend.
Yeah, so like, it's weird that you have this situation now that 3 of the semi-finalists are known after the weekend. Kilmurray Brecon, who most people will be familiar with, the champions, Lissy Casey, and then St Brecons. That's a really big achievement. They were only intermediate last year. They won the intermediate championship. They lost the Munster final to Temple No last December, but have really stepped up and made brilliant stride. I mean, that's great going to win an intermediate county title and get to a senior semi-final the following year. I'm not 100% sure of how this works. The way I'm describing it's a very convoluted format, but basically all the winners played each other, all the losers played each other, but it just seems like there's a bit of a logjam now to find the 4 semi-finalists. So we know 3 of them after the weekend. It was going to be confusing enough anyway, let alone that there's been a hold up for one of the games because of the Cratloe situation. I think they employed the same format in the hurling this year. Look, I know a lot of counties had to try and rethink things, and there was a debate about what way they were going to do their championships this year because of the time frame. And Clare do have a bit of I know there's a split between East and West, but there is a bit of a dual thing to consider when you have someone like, say, Milton Malbay win at the weekend. Conor Cleary is obviously a massive player for them. He plays hurling for Kilmaley. That's actually one of the late games on RTE this Saturday. There's 2 of the senior hurling quarterfinals on, so that's a kind of a factor to consider. But just seems strange after the weekend that we know 3 of the semi-finalists, but we won't know the 4th. It seems for a few weeks to come.
And between them and Dublin, that seems to be, that could be happening again if it's happening twice already. Derek Lynch,
the thing is, you wonder, like, they've waited a couple of weeks. So if they have to wait again, like, what do you do then? Do you say to them, listen, sorry lads, you're going to have to withdraw from the championship? Will the club refuse to, it's just, I wonder, we're just going to get into a situation where there's problems in kind of half the counties, and then we have half of them, we have county senior champions for the year, it's definitely just interesting, the fact that like Water and Wexford hurling, there'll be silverware handed out now, all going well within the next 10 days, and there's just complete uncertainty in a lot of other counties when they're going to get going again. This will be the weekend now, we'll find out, will Offaly, Laois and Kildare get the green light to come back? Probably seems a bit more uncertain in Kildare, doesn't it? Just looking at the kind of the case numbers. I think Offaly are down to, all going well, senior football games are down for next Monday and Tuesday night to kind of resume. But it's a strange old year.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to Kilmurray and Brecon beating Éire Óg 3-6 to 10 points. Derek Lynch, journalist down there, was tweeting, there are a few teams as good as Kilmurray at managing championship games, and this was another classic example. Once the goals went in after 5 minutes, it was as good as over. So the goals were from Daniel Walsh-Dermott, Coughlin and Keelan Sexton. Just a quick run over a few more results. In Donegal, all the big teams seem to be doing well. Naomh Conaill, they battered Thurman 6-18 to 8 points. Sean McCool's and Glenfinn drew 112 apiece. Four Masters beat Dunloe 410 to 114, and Guido beat St. Nolls with plenty to spare. Kilcoo, they beat Mayo Bridge in the Down Championship, and interestingly enough, this was 113 to 8 points. Kieran McKeever, he was coaching Kilcoo a couple of years ago, and now he's the manager of Mayo Bridge, so I'm sure that would have been rather interesting for him.
Yeah, I just flicked this on Friday night. It was on TG Carr, and I think it was just at the point he's been interviewed beforehand. I had no idea that that's what he was kind of doing now. He kind of got into the kind of club's coaching sphere, but just thinking, like, for a club game on, like, some seriously high profile names on the sideline from different counties, when you had Mickey Moore and Conor Gilligan on one side and McKeever on the other, both involved in Down Championship. I know, in fairness, the proximity especially between Armagh and Down, is very, very close, that it's obviously kind of seamless in terms of guys going between the two counties in terms of coaching jobs. It's probably easier for them as well, isn't it? You've no club loyalties to it. You never played in Down yourself, so maybe it's easier to be kind of stand back and not kind of get embroiled in that. I mean, I thought Mailbridge, the bit I saw, were quite impressive. I mean, obviously they won, was it 5 or 6 in a row back in the days when you had Mickey Linden towards the tail end of his career and Benny Coulter. Now obviously Kilcoe have taken over, but for the All-Ireland Club finalists to go toe to toe with them for long, I mean, the double scores thing kind of flatters them a bit, Kilcoe. Although I don't know, did you see the Kilcoe goal at the end? We're checking out, absolutely cracking finish by Jerome Johnson in terms of they kind of seized the short kick out and he kind of went for it then. But Mailbridge kind of give them enough for long stages, but I suppose very Kilcoe first championship game since last January, so maybe a little bit of rustiness is to be expected.
A couple other results: Breda beat Castlewellan, Longstone beat Loughlin Island, I should say, and then Quayle Mooney back after 8 months. He obviously had there was that terrible attack on the street, and he's back after 8 months. And Ross Trevor beat Downpatrick 11 to 15 points. So great to see him back again, because he's a Rolls Royce footballer, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if we think that at county level that he's a loss to Down, I'm not familiar with Ross Trevor's prospects now, but I mean, I presume he must be absolutely central to them. I mean, I think he was up for kind of one of those media club previews, wasn't he? A couple of years ago, they were in. I think it was the year actually they played Moy, was it? He was at Ulster in the media final. Could be wrong now, but he must be absolutely huge for them. I mean, if they're not long back up senior, couple of seasons, so to get a guy like that back is huge. And again, it's just another example where sometimes the thing has fallen well for guys in terms of a bit more time to get back, rather than if the Down Championship had gone as normal, you wouldn't know where he'd be kind of featuring now, or what sort of a campaign he'd be coming back to, or what stage it's at. So it's worked out well for him, and good to see him back.
I'll get your final thoughts from the weekend in a second, just to run through a couple of more results there. In Leitrim, Mohill beat Ahowillan 5-16 to 6 points. Ballinamore and Fina, they drew. Alan Gales saw off Drumreilly 2-14 to 11. Glencar Manor Hamilton beat Leitrim Gales by a goal 210 to 110. In Limerick, Newcastle West beat Drumcollar Broadford, and Adair beat Napearshig. Then in Meath, Dunamore Ashburn saw Essentialstown 213 to 18. Nobber, they beat Simonstown, which I think is a bit of a surprise because Simonstown had won a couple of county titles recently. Moynalvey beat Curraha. Nafina, they beat Navan O'Mahony's, and St. Colmkills beat Dunshaughlin. So final thoughts from the weekend there, Fintan?
One of the things that struck me was that it was one of the weekends where I was thinking it's a big pity we're not going to have provincial and All-Ireland championships, because just, when you're from the outside, obviously within the county, you'd be very into your own county championship and what's going on. When you're watching, you're seeing Boden go well, or you're seeing Naveana go well in Wexford, you're thinking, well, are they going to look to be Kilkenny champions? Just when you're taking kind of a wider view, it's kind of maybe just a pity, and I'm sure there will be some clubs that win the county senior titles will be a bit disappointed this year that's kind of it, that's the abrupt halt to it. But then again, look, I suppose the fixtures thing is so kind of uncertain and kind of so volatile. I think it'll be good to just kind of see everything kind of finished. And just from the point of view of the Cork stuff that I kind of would have seen, I just think it's the group stage format has just been great to watch, to be honest. I mean, you would be very familiar with it. From a Dublin hurling point of view, this is the first year they've had it here, and you've a couple of weekends now where the hurling football fixtures were announced today, where some games are knockout. The way it happens, it's fallen, but in others, it's going to be scoring difference come into it, and definitely, I just think it's the way forward, and definitely has made a big difference in terms of energizing the whole setup, which you badly needed to be honest.
Yeah, because actually, you make a fair point there. I mean, for the amount of months and hours and evenings that club players are putting into their championships, the idea that you'd only have one game in a knockout situation, I think, is an absolute farce. That if you're going to be training for 5, 6, 7, 8 months of the year, you should be guaranteed maybe 5 championship games in a year. Now you'd see in Kilkenny hurling, it's 2 groups of 5. This year they're only playing 3 each in the groups, and then there's the knockout, and then there's relegation. So you're up to 6, 7, 8 games in championship. I think that should be the case across the board. Now it's going to be tough in dual counties, but the calendar should be structured in such a way that you can have 5 or 6 games, because anything less doesn't justify the effort. It's very unfair.
Yeah, like the Cork system now, you used to maybe 2 or 3, but that would be kind of, I'm counting backdoor games into that, or maybe you might have a 4th round match, or you might have a relegation semi-final. But I just think the group stage system it just gets things really competitive, and it just really kind of breeds a lot of kind of life and urgency and enthusiasm to it. And similarly, I would say, I mean, just from the outside looking in, tip hurling, that kind of seems the case as well. I mean, I was just following a bit of that over the weekend, the way you had like a winner takes all, wasn't it, yesterday, the game was shown on
Killoe and Killoe, yeah.
And then the system was at last night at half time. Barnsley were a little bit on edge, I think, were they? You know, were they drawing and Tumira were losing? I'm not sure exactly permutations, but I just think that's great. I mean, like, we all think of, like, you know, last day of the Premier League season, you're following kind of tables and permutations and all that. And I just think, for a spectator point of view and a neutral point of view, that really does kind of give a bit of a life to it. And especially, I suppose, with the streaming thing at the moment, when you're kind of getting to watch games, because a lot of people can't go into it, maybe people are kind of buying into this kind of stuff all the more. And kind of getting it going. So I guess whenever we do kind of get back to some kind of a normal sense of or semblance of normality, it will be interesting to see what lessons or what changes counties take from this year and the GA at a national level, and whether some of the things that they've learned during the pandemic that they might kind of incorporate going forward.
Brilliant stuff, Fintan. We'll chat again soon.
No worries at all, Jay.